Welcome to Spiritual Walk. Before we begin, I want you to do something very simple. Don't change your position. Don't close your eyes. Just look at whatever is in front of you. And ask yourself one question. What am I paying attention to right now? It sounds like a simple question, but your answer may reveal something much deeper. Because every moment of your life, something is receiving your attention. A conversation, a notification, a memory, a problem, a fear, a person, a dream, a regret about the past, or a worry about the future. And while you are giving your attention to these things, something else is happening quietly. Your mind is deciding what deserves to become important. Think about the last time you were worried about something. Suddenly, everything seems connected to that worry. You heard a particular word, and it reminded you of it. You saw something online, and it reminded you of it. Someone said something completely innocent, and your mind connected it to the problem. The world itself had not necessarily changed, but your experience of the world had. And this brings us to a fascinating question. How much of the world you experience is shaped by what you choose to notice? We live in a time when our attention is constantly being requested. Your phone wants it. Social media wants it. News wants it. Advertisements want it. Work wants it. Other people's opinions want it. Even your own thoughts compete for it. And because attention feels invisible, we rarely think of it as something valuable. But it is. Your attention is one of the few resources you spend every single day without knowing exactly where it went. You can lose money and earn it again. You can lose possessions and replace them. But a moment of attention, once spent, does not return. So today, we're going to explore something much deeper than productivity. We're going to explore attention as a doorway into awareness. Why do some things capture your mind immediately? Why do certain thoughts keep returning? Why is it so difficult to remain present? Why can 10 minutes of scrolling feel effortless, while 5 minutes of silence can feel uncomfortable? And perhaps most importantly, can you learn to choose where your attention goes? Not perfectly, not every moment, but consciously. Because the quality of your attention influences the quality of your experience. So for the next 30 minutes, I want you to experiment with something. Don't simply listen to this video. Notice yourself listening. Notice when your mind wanders. Notice what makes you curious. Notice what makes you uncomfortable. Notice when you want to reach for your phone. Because the first step isn't controlling your attention. The first step is noticing where it already goes. Take one slow breath, and let's begin. What is attention? Before we go any deeper, let's slow down and understand something very basic. What exactly is attention? We use the word all the time. Pay attention. Stay focused. Don't get distracted. But attention is more mysterious than we usually realize. Think about everything happening around you right now. There may be sounds in the room. There may be movement outside. You may feel the chair beneath your body. You may notice the temperature of the air. You may even become aware of your breathing. All of these things can be happening at the same time. Yet you cannot consciously focus on all of them equally. Your mind selects. It brings certain things into the foreground and allows other things to fade into the background. That selection is attention. Imagine standing in the middle of a crowded city. Hundreds of conversations are happening around you. Cars are moving. People are walking. Buildings surround you. Signs are everywhere. And yet, you are able to have a conversation with one person. You don't consciously process every sound around you. Your attention creates a temporary doorway into one small part of reality. And here's where things become interesting. Attention is not the same thing as awareness. Awareness is broader. You can become aware that a sound exists without focusing on it. You can notice that your body is tense without immediately analyzing why. You can recognize that a thought has appeared without following that thought. Attention says, "Look here." Awareness says, "I notice what is here." That difference may seem small, but it can change the way you relate to your own mind. Imagine a thought appears, "I'm not good enough." If you immediately give that thought your attention, you may begin analyzing it. You remember previous failures. You imagine future problems. You compare yourself with someone else. One thought becomes 5 thoughts. 5 become 20. And suddenly, you are no longer simply experiencing a thought. You are living inside it. But what happens if you notice the thought without immediately following it? You might say internally, "There is a thought telling me I'm not good enough." Notice the difference. The first response identifies you with the thought. The second creates a little space around it. You are observing the thought, rather than automatically becoming the thought. This is one of the foundations of mindfulness, and it brings us to an important idea. Your mind produces thoughts automatically. You don't choose every thought that appears. Memories arise, images arise, emotions arise, worries arise, ideas arise. But you can become more conscious of what you continue to feed with your attention. That distinction is powerful, because you don't have to fight every thought. You don't have to silence your mind, and you don't have to become perfectly peaceful. Instead, you can learn to notice. Notice the thought, notice the emotion, notice the impulse, and then ask, "Do I want to give this my attention?" Sometimes the answer will be yes. If you're working on something important, attention is necessary. If someone you love needs you, attention matters. If you're learning, creating, listening, or solving a problem, attention is a gift. But sometimes the answer can be no. You don't have to follow every thought simply because it appeared. You don't have to open every notification simply because your phone made a sound. You don't have to enter every argument that invites your attention. You don't have to revisit every painful memory that crosses your mind. And this is where attention becomes more than a psychological concept. It becomes a practice of conscious living. Because every day, you are quietly answering the question, "What deserves my attention?" Usually you answer without realizing it. Today, we're going to begin answering it deliberately. So pause for a moment. Notice your breathing. Notice the sounds around you. Notice the thoughts passing through your mind. Don't change anything, just observe. For a few seconds, let everything be exactly as it is. And notice something remarkable. You are aware of all of this, without needing to control all of it. That quiet awareness is where our journey truly begins. The world you notice. There is something fascinating about attention. Two people can stand in exactly the same place, look at exactly the same scene, and walk away with completely different experiences. Imagine two people sitting beside the same lake. One notices the noise of the wind. Another notices the reflection of the sunlight. One notices how cold it is. Another notices how peaceful they feel. One is thinking about an argument from yesterday. Another is thinking about what they need to do tomorrow. The lake hasn't changed. The environment hasn't changed. But their experience of that moment is completely different. Why? Because attention acts like a filter. At any given moment, there is far more information around you than your mind can consciously process. Your senses are constantly receiving information. Sounds, colors, movement, temperature, textures, faces, words. Your body is also sending signals. Your heartbeat, your breathing, muscle tension, hunger, fatigue. And alongside all of this, your mind is generating thoughts, memories, predictions, and interpretations. You cannot consciously focus on everything, so your mind selects. It decides what becomes prominent and what remains in the background. This is why you can walk through a familiar street without remembering every building you passed. But if you suddenly become interested in a particular type of car, you may begin noticing that car everywhere. Did hundreds of those cars suddenly appear? Probably not. Your attention simply became sensitive to them. You started looking for something, and your mind became much more likely to notice it. The same thing can happen with emotions. If you spend your entire day looking for things that are going wrong, you will probably find them. There will always be something. A rude comment, a delayed train, a mistake at work, a message that wasn't answered, a problem you haven't solved. And slowly, your attention begins building a picture of reality around those things. But imagine changing the question. Instead of asking, "What is going wrong?" you ask, "What is going right?" Suddenly, you may notice something different. A kind conversation, a beautiful sky, a meal you enjoyed, someone who helped you, a moment of laughter, a small achievement you normally would have ignored. The world hasn't necessarily become perfect. You simply changed what you were looking for. And this is where we need to be careful. This does not mean you should ignore problems. Spirituality is not pretending that pain doesn't exist. If something is wrong, your attention may need to go toward it. If someone is hurting, you may need to notice. If you have a responsibility, you may need to focus. The lesson isn't only think positive thoughts. The lesson is become conscious of what you repeatedly choose to notice, because what you repeatedly notice becomes familiar, and what becomes familiar can begin to feel normal. Think about that for a moment. What do you notice most often? Problems? Threats? Other people's achievements? Your own mistakes? Things you don't have? Or moments of beauty, opportunities, people you appreciate? The simple experiences that are already present in your life. There is no need to judge your answer. Just observe it. Because awareness begins with honesty. And here's a small practice you can try today. At some point, go outside. Take a walk for 5 minutes. But don't listen to music. Don't scroll through your phone. Don't take photographs. Simply walk. And deliberately look for 5 things you normally wouldn't notice. Perhaps the shape of a leaf, a pattern in a wall, the sound of birds, the movement of clouds, the way sunlight falls across the ground. Don't search for something extraordinary. Look for something ordinary and give it your full attention. You may discover something surprising. The world didn't suddenly become more beautiful. You simply became available to see it. And that is one of the quiet powers of attention. It doesn't always change the world around you. Sometimes, it changes the world you are capable of noticing. The attention trap. Now let's look at something much closer to our everyday lives. Your attention is constantly being pulled. You wake up, and before you have even fully realized that you're awake, you may already be looking at a screen. A notification, a message, a headline, a video, an email. Something is asking you to look. Then another thing, and another. You move from one piece of information to the next, sometimes without even deciding to. And this is the strange part. Distraction doesn't always feel like distraction. Sometimes it feels like entertainment. Sometimes it feels like staying informed. Sometimes it feels like taking a break. And sometimes it simply feels like something you do automatically. Think about the last time you opened your phone without having a specific reason. Perhaps you unlocked it, opened an app, looked at something, and then, a few minutes later, wondered, why did I even pick up my phone? That moment is worth noticing, because there was a gap between intention and action. You didn't necessarily decide, I want to spend the next 10 minutes scrolling. The behavior simply happened. This is why attention is so important. Because if you don't consciously decide where your attention goes, something else will often decide for you. And the modern world is exceptionally good at capturing attention. Bright colors, notifications, endless feeds, breaking news, recommendations, short videos, messages. Every new piece of information promises something slightly more interesting than the previous one. Just one more video, one more post, one more headline, one more notification. And eventually, the mind becomes accustomed to constant stimulation. Then something interesting happens. Silence begins to feel uncomfortable. You sit down without your phone, and suddenly you notice your thoughts. You wait in a queue and instinctively reach for your screen. You lie in bed, and your hand searches for something to watch. You are eating, and you need something playing in the background. You are walking, and you need headphones. There is nothing inherently wrong with any of these things. Technology can be useful. Entertainment can be enjoyable. Communication can bring people closer. The problem begins when we lose the ability to choose, when stimulation becomes automatic, when being alone with our own attention starts to feel uncomfortable. Because silence reveals something. It reveals what has been waiting underneath the noise. A thought you haven't finished processing. An emotion you haven't acknowledged. A question you have been avoiding. Sometimes we aren't addicted to the screen itself. We are simply uncomfortable with what becomes visible when the screen disappears. So try something today. For just 5 minutes, put your phone somewhere you cannot immediately reach it. Sit somewhere quiet. Don't meditate perfectly. Don't try to empty your mind. Don't force yourself to feel peaceful. Just sit and watch what happens. Perhaps your mind will immediately search for stimulation. Perhaps you'll become restless. Perhaps you'll think, this is boring. That's okay. Don't fight the feeling. Observe it. You might discover that boredom isn't actually an absence of experience. It may simply be the moment when your mind stops receiving constant entertainment. Stay there for a little longer. Listen. Notice your breathing. Notice your thoughts. Notice the impulse to reach for your phone. And then ask yourself, do I actually need stimulation right now? Or have I simply become accustomed to it? That question can be surprisingly powerful, because reclaiming your attention doesn't mean abandoning technology. It means becoming conscious while using it. You should be able to pick up your phone because you chose to, and put it down because you chose to. You should be able to work with focus, rest without stimulation, listen to another person without checking a screen, and sit quietly without needing to escape yourself. That is freedom of attention. And perhaps this is one of the most important practices of modern spirituality. Not escaping the world, but learning how to remain present in it, without allowing everything around you to constantly decide where your mind should go. Your attention is yours. Treat it as something valuable, because wherever your attention repeatedly goes, your life is being experienced there. Attention and emotion. Now let's go one step deeper, because attention doesn't only determine what you notice, it can also influence what you continue to feel. Think about a difficult moment from your past, something someone said, a mistake you made, a relationship that ended, a decision you regret. You can remember the event, and then notice something interesting. The event happened once, but your mind may have returned to it hundreds of times. The conversation happened one time, but you may have replayed it again and again. The mistake lasted a few minutes, but you may have spent months thinking about what you should have done differently. This doesn't mean your feelings are wrong, and it doesn't mean you should simply think positive. Pain deserves to be acknowledged. Grief deserves space. Anger can contain information. Fear can sometimes protect us. The problem begins when attention becomes trapped inside an emotional loop. You remember something painful. You feel the emotion. The emotion brings another memory. That memory creates another thought, and the thought brings you back to the original emotion. The cycle continues, and because you experience the emotion repeatedly, it can begin to feel as though the original event is still happening. But there is an important difference between experiencing an emotion and repeatedly feeding the story around that emotion. Imagine you feel angry. The initial feeling may be real and immediate, but then the mind begins adding sentences. They shouldn't have done that. How could they? They always do this. I should have said something. What if it happens again? Now the original emotion has become a much larger mental story, and your attention is moving through that story again and again. This is why awareness matters. Instead of immediately becoming the story, you can pause. You can notice, I'm angry. Then, what am I thinking about? And perhaps, am I experiencing what is happening right now? Or am I repeatedly replaying what happened before? That small pause creates space, and space gives you a choice. You may still feel angry, but now you're aware that anger is present. You may still feel sadness, but you can recognize sadness without allowing every thought connected to it to take over. This is not about suppressing emotion. It is about changing your relationship with emotion. The same principle works with positive experiences. Think about gratitude. If you deliberately pause and remember something you're grateful for, your attention moves toward that experience. Perhaps it's a person. Perhaps it's your health. Perhaps it's a safe place to sleep. Perhaps it's simply the fact that you have another morning to experience. For a moment, you allow yourself to notice what is already present. Again, this doesn't erase life's difficulties. Gratitude isn't denial. You can be grateful and still struggle. You can be sad and still appreciate life. You can be afraid and still move forward. Human experience contains many emotions at once. The goal isn't to choose one emotion and reject everything else. The goal is to become conscious of where your attention repeatedly returns. So here's a question for you. What emotional story receives the most attention in your life? Is it regret? Fear? Comparison? Anger? Loneliness? Or perhaps it is something beautiful. Love, gratitude, curiosity, hope. There is no correct answer. Just notice. And if you discover that your attention repeatedly returns to something painful, don't criticize yourself. Simply ask, is there something here that needs to be understood? Sometimes attention is pointing towards something that needs healing. Sometimes it is pointing towards something that needs action, and sometimes it is simply an old habit of the mind. Learning the difference takes practice. So tonight, before you sleep, take a few quiet minutes. Think about one emotional experience that occupied a lot of your attention today. Don't judge it. Don't try to change it. Simply observe it. Ask yourself, what happened? What did I feel? What story did my mind create around it? And finally, where did my attention go after that? You may begin to notice something important. Your emotions are part of your experience, but they don't have to become the entire landscape of your mind. You can feel something without becoming lost inside it. You can remember something without living inside the memory. And you can notice a thought without giving it your entire attention. That space is where conscious choice begins. The stories you keep repeating. There is another place where attention quietly shapes our lives. And it is much closer than our phones, closer than the news, closer than everything happening around us. It is the story we tell ourselves about who we are. Think about the sentences that appear in your mind when something goes wrong. I'm just not good at this. Things never work out for me. I always make the wrong decision. People don't really understand me. I'll never change. Maybe you've never said these things out loud, but perhaps you've thought them. And when a thought is repeated often enough, it can begin to feel less like a thought and more like a fact. This is where attention becomes powerful. Imagine someone who believes they are not confident. They walk into a room. Their attention immediately searches for evidence. Who is looking at them? Did someone ignore them? Did they say something awkward? Did someone else seem more confident? Their mind collects these moments, and at the end of the day, they may think, "See, I'm not confident." But what about the moments they didn't notice? The person who smiled at them, the conversation that went well, the moment they spoke clearly, the small decision they made with courage. Those moments may have happened too, but their attention was searching for something else. This doesn't mean that they imagined the difficult moments. It means their attention may have been selective. And the same thing can happen with almost any belief we carry about ourselves. If you believe that nobody appreciates you, you may notice every moment someone fails to acknowledge you. If you believe that you're always behind, you may compare yourself to people who appear further ahead. If you believe that life is constantly working against you, every obstacle can become another piece of evidence. The story becomes stronger. Not necessarily because the story is completely true, but because your attention keeps returning to the evidence that supports it. This is sometimes called confirmation bias. Our minds can be drawn toward information that confirms what we already believe. And this happens to all of us. Not just negative people, not just anxious people, all of us. We develop mental patterns, and once a pattern becomes familiar, we can stop questioning it. So here's something worth trying. Think of one sentence you frequently tell yourself. Not something dramatic, something ordinary. Maybe, I'm always tired. I'm terrible with money. I never finish what I start. I'm too old to change. I'm not creative. I don't have enough time. Now ask yourself, is this absolutely true? Not, can I prove that it is false? Just, is it absolutely true? Then ask, when did I first begin believing this? You might discover that some of your strongest beliefs were inherited from parents, from teachers, from friends, from relationships, from one painful experience, or from a period of life that has already ended, yet the story remained. And perhaps the most important question is this: does this story still serve me? Notice that we are not trying to replace every negative thought with a positive affirmation. That's not the goal. If you tell yourself something you don't believe, your mind may simply reject it. Instead, look for something more honest. If your mind says, "I always fail," you might ask, "Have I really always failed?" If it says, "I can't change," ask, "Have I ever changed before?" If it says, "Nobody cares about me," ask, "Is that completely true?" These questions don't create a fantasy, they create space. And sometimes, space is enough to see a familiar story from a different angle. You are not required to believe every thought your mind produces. A thought can be familiar without being true. A belief can be old without being permanent. And a story can have shaped your past without having to define your future. So tonight, listen carefully to the language you use when you speak about yourself. Not only when you're confident, especially when you make a mistake. Listen to the words that appear automatically, because the stories you repeat receive your attention. And what repeatedly receives your attention can begin to feel like the world you live in. Perhaps changing your life doesn't always begin with creating a completely new identity. Perhaps it begins with becoming curious about the old stories and asking whether they still deserve your attention. Attention versus awareness. So far, we've been asking where your attention goes. Now let's ask something deeper. Who is noticing where your attention goes? Take a moment. Notice what is happening in your mind right now. Perhaps you're thinking about what you're hearing. Perhaps you're thinking about something completely unrelated. Maybe a memory appeared. Maybe you're wondering what comes next. Don't try to stop those thoughts. Simply notice them. A thought appeared, and you noticed it. That simple observation reveals something important. You are not only thinking, you are also aware that you are thinking. This is the difference between attention and awareness. Attention can become absorbed in an experience. Awareness can notice the experience. Imagine watching a movie. When the story becomes powerful, you become absorbed. You laugh. You feel tension. You become emotionally involved. For a moment, you forget that you're sitting in a room. Your attention has entered the story. Then perhaps someone speaks to you. Suddenly you remember, I'm sitting here watching a movie. The story is still playing, but now you have some distance from it. The same thing can happen with your thoughts. Imagine a thought appears. I'm going to fail. If your attention immediately follows it, another thought may appear, then another. Soon, you're imagining an entire future based on one sentence. But awareness can recognize, I'm having a thought about failure. The thought hasn't necessarily disappeared, but your relationship with it has changed. You are observing the thought, rather than automatically becoming lost inside it. This is an important principle in mindfulness. You don't need to fight every thought. You don't need to silence your mind. And you don't need to become perfectly peaceful. Instead, you can learn to notice. I'm thinking. I'm remembering. I'm worrying. I'm comparing. I'm judging. That small recognition creates space. And inside that space, you have more choice. Think about how quickly your attention moves. A sound appears. Your attention moves toward it. A memory appears. Your attention travels into the past. A worry appears. Your attention jumps into the future. A notification appears. Your attention leaves whatever you were doing. Sometimes you don't even realize you've moved. 10 minutes can disappear. Then you suddenly wonder, where did my mind go? Awareness helps you notice that movement. And once you notice, you can return. Return to your breathing. Return to the conversation. Return to the person in front of you. Return to the task you're doing. Return to this moment. The mind will wander. That is normal. The goal isn't to prevent it from wandering. The practice is noticing that it wandered and gently returning. Let's try this together. For a few breaths, simply notice your breathing. Feel the air entering. Feel the air leaving. Now, if a thought appears, don't follow it. Just notice. Thought. Then return to your breath. If another thought appears, notice it and return. If you hear a sound, notice it and return. Nothing needs to be achieved. You're simply learning to observe your experience. Now imagine using this practice during an ordinary day. Anger appears. Notice it. Fear appears. Notice it. Comparison appears. Notice it. The desire to check your phone appears. Notice it. Before automatically reacting, pause. Ask yourself, where is my attention right now? And then, do I want to keep it there? You won't always change your answer, and that's okay. The goal isn't perfect control. The goal is conscious choice. Because your thoughts will come and go. Your emotions will rise and fall. Your attention will wander. But you can become increasingly aware of the movement. And when you notice that movement, something changes. You are no longer simply being carried by every thought that appears. You can pause. You can observe. You can return. And sometimes, that tiny space between noticing and reacting is enough to change what happens next. Perhaps that is one of the quietest forms of freedom. Not controlling everything inside your mind, but becoming conscious enough to choose what deserves your attention. That is where our journey takes us next, into the present moment. The present moment. There is something strange about the present moment. It is the only place where your life is actually happening, yet your mind is often somewhere else. Think about it. Your body is here, but your mind may be remembering yesterday, rehearsing tomorrow, or imagining something that hasn't happened at all. You can be eating a meal while thinking about work. You can be talking to someone you love while worrying about something that might happen tomorrow. You can be walking through a beautiful place while replaying a conversation from last week. Your body is in the present, but your attention is somewhere else. And this happens so naturally that we often don't notice it. The past has already happened. The future hasn't happened yet. And yet so much of our mental life exists between those two places. Of course, thinking about the past can be valuable. We learn from experience. We remember people we love. We understand ourselves through our history. And thinking about the future is necessary too. We plan. We prepare. We imagine possibilities. The problem isn't thinking about the past or future. The problem is forgetting that we are doing it. There is a difference between consciously remembering yesterday and becoming trapped inside yesterday. There is a difference between preparing for tomorrow and spending hours worrying about a future that hasn't arrived. The present moment is where you can actually respond. It is where you can breathe, listen, speak, move. choose, notice. But being present isn't always easy. Why? Because the present moment can be quiet. And when everything becomes quiet, we may finally notice what has been underneath the noise. Restlessness, uncertainty, thoughts we haven't processed, feelings we've been avoiding. This is why constant stimulation can become so attractive. If there is always something to watch, something to read, something to listen to, something to check, we don't have to sit with the experience of simply being here. But presence doesn't mean escaping thought. You can be present while thinking. You can plan while remaining present. You can remember while remaining present. The difference is that you know where your attention is. So let's practice. Wherever you are right now, feel the weight of your body. Notice the surface supporting you. Listen for the sounds closest to you. Then listen for the sounds farther away. Notice your breathing. Don't change it. Just notice. Now look at something in front of you. Really look at it. Notice its shape, its texture, its color, its edges. You may have seen this object many times before, but perhaps you've never actually looked at it this carefully. This is presence. Not something mystical, not something complicated. Simply giving this moment enough attention to actually experience it. Now bring that idea into ordinary life. When someone speaks to you, listen before preparing your response. When you eat, taste the food. When you walk, feel your feet touching the ground. When you're drinking something, notice its temperature and texture. When you are with someone you love, let yourself actually be there. You don't need to turn every moment into meditation. You simply need to stop abandoning moments that are already happening. Because life is made from these moments. Not the perfect future you keep imagining. Not the past you wish you could rewrite. This one, and then this one, and then this one. So the next time you notice your mind somewhere far away, don't criticize yourself. Simply recognize, my attention has left the present, and gently return. Return to your breath. Return to your surroundings. Return to the person in front of you. Return to your life. Because the present moment isn't somewhere you need to travel to. You've been here all along. You only need to notice. The attention practice. Now we've talked about attention. We've talked about distraction. We've talked about awareness. We've talked about the present moment. But understanding something intellectually is different from experiencing it. So now, let's practice. You don't need to sit in a special position. You don't need to close your eyes. And you don't need to make your mind completely silent. Simply become comfortable. If you're walking or driving, don't do this exercise with your eyes closed. Keep your attention on your surroundings and stay safe. Otherwise, take a slow breath, and for the next few minutes, do nothing except notice. First, notice your body. Feel where your body is touching the surface beneath you. Perhaps you can feel your feet, your hands, your shoulders, your face. Don't try to change anything. Just notice. Now bring your attention to your breathing. Don't control it. Don't make it deeper. Simply notice the next breath. Air entering and air leaving. Now listen. Don't search for a particular sound. Simply listen to whatever is already happening around you. Perhaps you hear traffic. Perhaps voices. Perhaps wind. Perhaps the quiet hum of a room. Notice the closest sound. Then notice the farthest sound you can hear. Now bring your attention back to your breathing. One breath, then another. At some point, a thought will appear. Maybe it already has. Perhaps you're thinking, am I doing this correctly? That's a thought. Perhaps you're thinking about something you need to do later. That's a thought too. Don't push it away. Simply notice, thinking, and gently return to your breath. Another thought may appear. Notice it, and return. This is important. You are not trying to win a battle against your mind. The mind is doing what minds naturally do. It thinks, it remembers, it predicts, it wanders. Your practice is simply noticing and returning. Now let's make the exercise slightly deeper. Bring one ordinary object into your attention. It could be a cup, a table, a tree outside your window, your hands, anything you can see. Look at it carefully. Notice its shape, its texture, its edges, its small imperfections. Ask yourself, how long can I look at something ordinary before my mind tries to move somewhere else? Don't judge the answer. If your attention moves after 5 seconds, notice that. If it stays for a minute, notice that. The goal isn't a particular number. The goal is awareness. Now ask yourself quietly, where does my attention naturally want to go? Maybe toward your phone. Maybe toward a memory. Maybe toward a problem. Maybe toward something you're excited about. Whatever appears, observe it. You don't have to follow it. Now take one more slow breath and ask yourself, what have I been giving too much attention to lately? Don't force an answer. Let one come naturally. Perhaps it's a worry, a relationship, social media, a mistake, comparison, work, something you cannot control. Or perhaps there is something you've been neglecting. Your health, your creativity, your relationships, your rest, your own inner life. Just notice. Now ask one final question. Is this where I want my attention to continue going? You don't need to answer immediately. Simply sit with the question. Because this is the real practice. Not controlling every thought. Not becoming peaceful every second. Not escaping difficult emotions. The practice is noticing. Noticing where your attention goes. Noticing what repeatedly captures it, and becoming conscious enough to choose what deserves it. Take one final breath. Feel your body again. Notice the space around you. Listen to the sounds around you. And when you're ready, return fully to the moment. Carry one thing from this exercise with you. The next time you catch yourself lost in thought, don't immediately criticize yourself. Pause, notice, and gently return, because every return is a reminder. Your attention may wander, but you can always become aware again, choosing what deserves your attention. Now that you've experienced the practice, let's bring it back into everyday life. Because attention isn't only something you practice while sitting quietly. You practice it every time you decide what deserves your time, your energy, and your presence. Think about your day. You have a limited amount of attention, yet there are thousands of things competing for it. Messages, news, social media, work, entertainment, other people's opinions, your responsibilities, your worries, your ambitions, and sometimes things that don't actually matter to you at all. So here's a question worth asking. If my attention is limited, what deserves it? Not everything deserves the same amount. Some things deserve a few seconds. Some deserve an hour. Some deserve years of your life. And some things perhaps deserve none of it. Consider comparison. You see someone else's success online, a new job, a new relationship, a new house, a perfect-looking vacation. And suddenly your attention moves toward what you don't have. You begin measuring your life against a carefully selected moment from someone else's life. Ask yourself, is this comparison helping me? If it inspires you to grow, perhaps it has value. But if it only makes you feel inadequate, perhaps your attention belongs somewhere else. Now think about relationships. When someone is speaking to you, where is your attention? Are you actually listening? Or are you preparing your response, checking your phone, thinking about what you need to do next? Presence is one of the simplest forms of respect. Sometimes the most meaningful thing you can give another person is your undivided attention. Now think about your goals. Many people say they don't have enough time. But sometimes the deeper problem isn't time. It's fragmented attention. 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there. A notification interrupts. A message appears. A video begins. A thought pulls you away. At the end of the day, you were busy, but you may not have been deeply present with anything. This is why protecting your attention matters. If something is genuinely important to you, give it uninterrupted space. Turn off what doesn't need to be there. Create distance from unnecessary distractions, and allow yourself to focus. But there is another side to this. You don't have to give all your attention to productivity. Rest deserves attention too. Nature deserves attention. Friendship deserves attention. Creativity deserves attention. Your own inner life deserves attention. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is simply stop producing and experience being alive. So perhaps the question isn't, how can I pay attention to everything? You can't. Perhaps the better question is, what do I want to be present for? Think about the people you love. Think about your health. Think about the work that matters to you. Think about the experiences you don't want to miss. Think about the kind of person you are trying to become. These things deserve attention. And then think about the things that repeatedly consume your attention without giving anything meaningful back. Perhaps it's endless scrolling, arguments with strangers, constant comparison, worrying about things you cannot control, replaying conversations that are already over, trying to predict every possible future. You don't have to eliminate all of these things, but you can become more conscious of them. The next time you notice yourself giving attention to something, pause for a moment. Ask, why am I here? Did I choose this? Is this useful? Is this meaningful? Or did I simply follow an impulse? You don't need to judge yourself. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is awareness. Because every conscious choice strengthens your ability to choose again. And slowly, your days begin to look different. Not because the world suddenly becomes quieter, but because you become more deliberate about what you allow into the center of your experience. Your attention is not infinite, so don't spend it as though it is. Give it to people who matter. Give it to work that matters. Give it to experiences that make you feel alive. Give it to learning. Give it to rest. Give it to the present moment. And most importantly, give some of it back to yourself. Because if you are constantly giving your attention away, you may eventually discover that you have been everywhere, except here. And perhaps conscious living begins with something very simple. Choosing where you are willing to be fully present. The deeper spiritual meaning. We have traveled a long way from a simple question, where does your attention go? But perhaps there is a deeper question underneath it. What happens when you become conscious of where your attention goes? You begin to notice your mind. You notice your habits, You notice your emotions. You notice the stories you tell yourself. You notice what repeatedly pulls you away from the present. And slowly, you begin to notice yourself. This is where attention becomes part of a spiritual practice. Not because attention is magical. Not because you can simply think about something and force the universe to give it to you. But because awareness changes your relationship with your experience. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning. The same responsibilities are waiting. The same world exists outside your window. The same problems may still be there. But instead of immediately reaching for your phone, you take one breath. You notice the morning. You notice your thoughts. You choose what receives your attention first. That tiny moment may seem insignificant, but it is a moment of consciousness. And consciousness is often built through small moments. One breath, one pause, one decision, one return to the present, again and again. Perhaps spirituality isn't always about reaching somewhere extraordinary. Perhaps sometimes it is about becoming fully present where you already are. You don't need to escape ordinary life to experience depth. You can find it while walking, while listening, while eating, while sitting quietly, while speaking with someone you love, while watching sunlight move across a wall. The ordinary becomes different when you actually notice it. And perhaps this is why so many spiritual traditions have valued silence, meditation, prayer, contemplation, and mindful attention. They create a space in which we can observe the movement of the mind, instead of being completely controlled by it. Of course, life will still be difficult. You will still become distracted. You will still lose patience. You will still worry. You will still make mistakes. Being conscious doesn't mean becoming perfectly calm. It means becoming capable of noticing, and then returning. Returning to what matters. Returning to the present. Returning to yourself. Think about how often we live as though life will begin later. When I have more money. When I find the right person. When my work becomes easier. When I finally achieve this goal. Then I will slow down. Then I will be happy. But life doesn't happen later. It happens in moments like this one. And if we spend every present moment waiting for a better future, we may spend our entire lives waiting. This doesn't mean you should stop having goals. Dreams matter. Growth matters. Ambition matters. But don't sacrifice every present moment for a future that isn't guaranteed. Build your future, while remaining present enough to experience your life along the way. And perhaps this is the deeper lesson of attention. What you repeatedly attend to becomes part of your lived experience. So choose carefully. Not perfectly. Carefully. Pay attention to the people you love. Pay attention to the lessons hidden inside difficult experiences. Pay attention to beauty. Pay attention to your body. Pay attention to your thoughts without becoming imprisoned by them. Pay attention to the moments that would normally pass unnoticed. And pay attention to the life that is already happening, while you are busy planning the life you hope to have. Because one day, you may look back and realize that life was not hidden in some extraordinary moment. It was here, in ordinary mornings, in quiet conversations, in difficult lessons, in unexpected laughter, in moments when you simply stopped and noticed that you were alive. Maybe the spiritual journey isn't about discovering something that was never there. Maybe it is about becoming quiet enough to recognize what has been here all along. And that begins with attention. Where you place it, how consciously you place it, and whether you are willing to come back again and again and again. The closing reflection. Before we finish, take one more slow breath and think about everything we've explored. Your attention, your thoughts, your emotions, your habits, the stories you tell yourself, the distractions that surround you, and the moments when you simply return to the present. Perhaps the most important thing to remember is this: you don't have to control everything. You don't have to control every thought. You don't have to control every emotion. You don't have to control what other people think. You don't have to control everything that happens tomorrow. But you can become more conscious of where your attention goes. And that is a powerful place to begin. Because attention is not just about concentration. It is about presence. It is about what you notice, what you listen to, what you repeatedly think about, what you allow to occupy your inner world, and ultimately, what you choose to be present for. So when you wake up tomorrow, before the world begins asking for your attention, give yourself a moment. Take a breath. Look around. Notice that you are here. Then ask yourself, what deserves my attention today? Maybe the answer is your work. Maybe it is your family. Maybe it is your health. Maybe it is something you've been avoiding. Maybe it is simply yourself. Whatever the answer is, give it your presence. And when your attention wanders, because it will, don't become frustrated. Return. When you lose focus, return. When you become trapped in a thought, notice it and return. When you spend too much time worrying about tomorrow, return to today. When you find yourself replaying yesterday, return to this moment. Again and again and again. That return is not failure. That return is the practice. And perhaps, over time, you will begin to notice something. The world may not have changed dramatically. Your responsibilities may still be there. Your problems may still exist. But your relationship with your life can begin to change. You become more present, more observant, more deliberate. You begin noticing moments that once passed unnoticed. A conversation, a sunrise, a quiet walk, a breath, a smile, a moment of silence. And you realize you were never lacking moments. You were sometimes simply absent from them. So wherever you are right now, look around you. Really look. This moment will never happen again in exactly the same way. The sounds around you will change. The light will change. Your thoughts will change. You will change. And this moment will become part of your past. So don't rush through it. Be here for it. Your attention is a gift. Give it consciously. Give it generously. And give some of it to the life that is already happening, right in front of you. If you stayed with me until the end, I hope this journey gave you something valuable to carry into your day. Not another rule, not another thing you have to perfect. Just a simple reminder. Notice where your attention goes. Because where you repeatedly place your attention is where you repeatedly experience your life. Thank you for walking this path with me. This is Spiritual Walk. If this video helped you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you know someone who needs a moment to slow down, share this journey with them. Until our next walk, stay present, stay curious, and keep noticing.